Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Welcome to today's episode. Today I am chatting with Rebecca Faye Smith Galli. Am I saying all of the last names properly, Rebecca?
The tricky one is Galli.
Okay.
Smith is great.
Okay, Galli. Okay, Galli. Rebecca Smith Galli. She is an author, a columnist, and an advocate, and she writes about love, loss, and healing. And she has had significant losses in her life, which we will be talking about that. Her two books that she's written, one is Rethinking Possible, a memoir of resilience, and then her most recent book, Morning Fuel, daily inspiration to stretch your mind before starting your day. And yeah, we wanna know everything there is to know about you, Rebecca. So first off, welcome again. Happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story and for being so resilient. Like resilience is definitely something that we acquire, I think, in our lives based on the different experiences that we go through. And I know you've been through a lot in your adult life, but take us back to your childhood. Were there any things in your childhood that built up this resilience within you? And then we'll talk more of the present. Tell us your childhood.
Yeah, I was very fortunate, and I didn't really realize this until later in life. But our family was close by design. I had a really positive childhood. My parents were fun and active, created purposeful sit-down suppers and I say sit down breakfast and 6 o'clock suppers, and where we really had a lot of family time was kind of orchestrated for that. There were 5 of us. And the first time I really had to deal with significant loss was when my 17-year-old brother was killed in a water skiing accident. And that's when I think we really we got to see what we were made out of, because life had been great. I was 20 years old. I had college of my dreams. I was on the track that I wanted to be on, and my younger brother Forrest was 17, and he had great plans to go to Wake Forest and become a lawyer, career in politics. He was that kid, president of student body, musician, athlete, active in church, community, real leader. And just, he had the accident, and 9 days later he was gone. So I think in many ways I got a front row seat to watching my parents go through one of the most tragic losses you can imagine, the loss of a child, their only son. And we all grieved very differently. And I didn't realize that till I was writing Rethinking Possible, what I learned from that. My father was very public. He was a minister and was able to take his lessons and talk about them publicly, write about them, became a noted lecturer on grief. My mother was very private, joined support groups. I was with my college buddies and they helped me move through my grief. And my sister wanted to be with him, which was an alarming situation. And she had to, we had to get support for her in very different ways.
How old was your
So
sister?
she was 16. So they
Oh,
were
she
only
was a
17
year.
months apart and were both in high school at the same time. And so in many ways she had a community loss she had to deal with. Everybody was grieving. And I was in a totally different environment with people
With
that knew
school.
my brother, but not in the same way.
Wow.
So
Yeah, what you said about having that front row seat and seeing your parents, how they navigated that grief, informed you per se of how it is a parent might grieve and the differences, because you then later experienced your own grief as a parent as well later on, which we will talk about as well. But in this dynamic, so when you were 20, then your college was not in the same town. Was your college out of town? Were you living on your own at that moment when your brother died?
yes, in many ways, I said as our family shattered, kind of emotionally and how we handled things, but also physically, because at that point, we lived in Hickory, North Carolina, and I was 2.5 hours away in college, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And then right after that, my father had got a new pastorate in Huntington, West Virginia. So he moved physically there while my sister was finishing up her junior year in high school. So dad was in one state, and then I was 2.5 hours away from Rachel, my sister, and my mom. So we were physically not even in the same area. So that was another factor in how we move through this.
And yeah, as a college, I can relate to that part of being alone. And my sister died while I was in college too, and she was 18, and I was
Oh my
in
gosh.
college at the time. My parents were in Colombia, and I was in California. So I also, I mean, I did go and spend time with my family in Colombia, after my sister died, but the same in college with people around you that do not know what you've been through either. And that a lot of your peers might have not gone through something like that either. So finding that relatability, right, within this other circle. And if people didn't know, some of the people I knew where I was going to school actually had met my sister. So at that, which was helpful. But yeah, if like when you don't, it is, yeah, very isolated. It could be very isolating.
Yes, and in many ways they kept me moving though, because there was the structure of classes, the structure of going out with them, and they, after I wrote Rethinking Possible and I was very open about how I was feeling about that, my friends were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I wasn't there for you more." I was like, "Yes, in a way you were, that I needed structure." And I think that's one of the key things in not getting stuck in your grief is having structure, and not isolating. Those two things, structure and avoiding isolation. And they wouldn't let me isolate. They would try to nudge me out. And sometimes you need that nudge just to stop getting, to get too self-absorbed with it. I mean, you need those. It's a balance, really, of
Yes.
time alone to absorb and process and not ignore the grief, because that's another danger. It's like this pendulum swing of, you can ignore it, or then you can get stuck in it. You've got to kind of swing back and forth and realize that's really natural for that kind of swing to happen.
I love that description of the pendulum, because yes, it's not that you are not going to feel these feelings. You should. It's just don't get stuck in them. It's like being in the what is that when you get that stuck in the mud, that the mud that sucks you in. What's that mud called? Oh my God.
Quicksand stuff.
Quicksand.
Yes.
Yeah, quicksand. It's like don't go on the quicksand. But don't be afraid to about those feelings either. But also don't say no to some of these other things like invitations of maybe going out or things like that too. That can also help you kind of navigate that the emotions in a different a different way. So having some sense of normalcy for you because people around you were living their normal lives when you were in college helped you in your grief as well. So this was then when you were 20. Then take us into then the you're then get married, you have children and your children. Talk about your children and the subsequent grief of navigating illness and death as well.
Yeah. So my firstborn was, we're all about, one of the mantras that my father taught us that we lived by was what's planned is possible. And so it was all about plans. And so things were going according to plan once, got after my brother's death, I resumed college, married the man of my dreams. We wanted to have our first child before I was 29 years old. He wanted to get his MBA, and she was born right after his graduation for an MBA. And then I was 29. So, but after that, our next son had epilepsy. He, at 3 months of age, presented with seizures. At the time, we were told that it was kind of a fluke, that it wasn't anything genetic about that. So, and we were also told that he could perhaps grow out of these seizures. So I had my first episode with grief in moving through uncertain times, because there was a good chance that he could outgrow the seizures. At that time, I learned about a very powerful concept that I continue to use in dealing with uncertainty. When I went to see the psychologist at the hospital where he was for some time, I said, "What do you do? I don't know how to hope. How do I manage this hope for because I keep getting disappointed. One day he looks, he's babbling and alert, and the next day he's racked with seizures, and I don't know which way life is going to go." And she said, "Well, why don't you pursue parallel paths?" And I had never heard that term before. And she said, on the hope path, you hope that he's going to grow out of this. But on kind of the fear path, or what could be the reality path, he doesn't. And envision life both ways and journey actively on both paths, so that whichever way it goes, you've been prepared and you're not stuck in this uncertainty, this immobility of uncertainty. And that was really helpful to me. It just kind of was a calming mist, like, okay, I can plan in two directions. And on the hopeful path, I can envision life with that, and I can make preparations for that. And on the reality path, or the fearful path, which turned out to be the reality, he does not, in fact, declines and later dies at age 15. So, but that concept of parallel paths, I used with my daughter, who was my next born, and she was diagnosed with autism. And there was the same uncertainty. What's life going to be like for her? And so I moved through that, and she did not get better. She was able to learn scripted vocabulary, but she can't read or write or ever be left alone at this point in her life. She's 33. But I found good care for her, and a lot of that came from journeying on these two different paths. And those took a toll on our marriage, those dealing with these these children who had special needs. When we started having trouble, I went into the therapist and I said, we need to try to figure this out. But one thing for sure, I either want an amazing marriage or I want an amazing divorce. But you need to help us learn how to communicate through this in the best interest of our children and ourselves, how to navigate this. And after 3 years of intensive counseling, we decided to have an amazing divorce. And we did, and we do. And he's still involved in my life. We vacation together, and he's amazingly supportive of the children still. And I've welcomed his wife and their son, and it's been kind of crazy but good situation. But it takes a lot of work and love and generosity on both accounts for that kind of thing to work. So, but 9 days after my divorce was final, I woke up with some shooting pains in my legs. And it turns out that it was a rare inflammation of the spinal cord called transverse myelitis that affects 1 in a million. And in 6 hours, I was paralyzed from the waist down. So my kids at the time were 3, 4, 7, and 9. And
they were
it was a lot.
young. 3, 4, 7. Oh, so you have 4. You have 4 kids.
Yes. So
tell
after,
us, please. Are you good with sharing their names?
Oh, sure.
Could you
So
please,
Brittany was my oldest.
Brittany is your oldest. Okay.
Matthew was my son that had epilepsy and died at age 15. Madison is my daughter with autism, and then my youngest son, Peter. He also had some problems at his birth. He had a blood disorder called alloimmune thrombocytopenia. So he was
my
at
goodness,
risk
that's a mouthful. I would not be able
Isn't
to
it?
read. I'm glad you said it. If I had to read that out, I would not even be able to.
So, but that one he grew out of. He was in the NICU for 13 days with that. But he was speech delayed. And so at one point I had Madison and Peter in speech therapist. He did outgrow his speech situation. Madison did not. And so he went on to go to Stanford and be a stellar student and athlete too. But yeah, I had the 4 at the time. And
the 4 under 7, the 4 kids
under 9,
under 9 years old. And you then end up being paralyzed and then on your own because you had just divorced. So what did you, who was your community? Who helped you then? Because here you are as a single mom at that moment with 4 kids, 2 with special needs, and now you are in special needs as well, like needing support. Who helped you?
It was crazy. Well, at the time, this was 1997. And so I was able to have aides for a while to help me manage my body until I could figure out how to do it on my own. So I had some support. And then Joe, my ex-husband at the time, was incredibly supportive financially with helping me hire people to help me manage their lives. So I had, different caregivers come in and help get them to school, help get them to activities, help get me places. And I had a wonderful community at church that pitched in, neighbors that pitched in with meals for a long time, just to keep us going until I could figure out what my life was going to be like, because I had great hope too.
I was just going to ask if you also did the hope and fear paths in your own health journey. And yeah, you robbed me from my thought of, go ahead.
So
yes.
the transverse myelitis, a third of people recover fully, a third recover partially, and a third have no recovery at all. And I thought, maybe this is my time to have a complete recovery, but that wasn't to be. So I did have great hope for that. And on the hopeful path, I was going to therapy 3 times a week, doing all the nutritional supplements, acupuncture, you name every kind of therapy you could imagine, and it just didn't work. And so after about 19 months, the last thing I wiggled was my left big toe. And every day that was kind of like my mental energy. Let me see if I can wiggle that toe. Let me see. So it got to the point after 19 months, and I realized, Becky, I think you're just going to have to accept this. So I call it a big toe moment, where I decided to stop wiggling that, or trying to even wiggle that left big toe. And I let go of a lot of things I was doing on that hopeful path, like 3 times a week being at therapy instead of being at dinner with my kids. And I reinvested that energy spent in hope in living fully in the life I had. And I think that is really the goal, probably all of our goals as we age, as our families expand and contract, is to live fully in the life that you have. And once you accept that and let go of that angst of am I not, it's really freeing to have the extra energy that you used in one part of your life that you can redirect into another. And it's like, it's opportunity. It's possibility.
Hi, I just had to come on and just kind of interrupt right now this episode that you're hearing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you guys are listening to this conversation. And every single time I hear a guest, there's something new that I learn and something else that ends up showing up within me that I realize I still have to work on. And if by chance, as you're listening to this conversation, you're feeling the same, that there's parts of you that are being stirred up, and you are navigating a life transition right now that feels just heavy and stressful and just layered with grief, I want you to know that you do not have to do it alone. I invite you to connect with me for a free 15-minute discovery call, and we'll explore what's coming up for you and see if working together feels like the right fit. Just check the show notes below for my email and reach out for details. I'd really love to support you in integrating these transitions with more ease and clarity. Can't wait to hear back from you. Okay, let's keep on listening to the episode. I love that because it comes from this acceptance, and then also just being present with what is and not what could be, could have, when you're just present with what is and making the best of what is in your scenario. That is so inspiring, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing that journey. And I'm curious then, this happened prior to then Matthew's death, of you going through the grief of divorce, going through the grief of your own illness, and then you had to experience in the grief as a mother of his passing. And what are the tools that helped you, or have been the tools, aside from writing, because that's definitely one, and that have helped you navigate the grief of losing a child, having a child die?
I think what I learned, there's some commonality in all of them, which is, first of all, to be very honest about how you feel about the situation. And because there's sadness, but sometimes there's anger, and sometimes there's this chronic disappointment of the things that you no longer have with that child, as anniversaries come, as moments come that put you right back into it. I say, grief is a strange companion. it comes and it taps you on the shoulder, whether it be a smell or a sight or even a turn of phrase, and you're right back in it. And I've had to learn to be honest about, oh, I'm in it, and to kind of welcome this not a friend, it's a companion, really.
A guest, like a
A
guest,
guest. I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
a guest.
And to say, okay, I'm cherishing your visit here, but you're not going to stay. You know, you're going to have your moment and then leave. But this honesty about the feelings. And then there's another honesty about what's my capacity to deal with this? Can I manage this on my own? Do I need help? Do I need resources? What can I do to help manage this, whether it be writing or whether it be talking or whether it be, doing? There's many ways to address this. And then the second thing after this honesty is who are your resources? Who can be in the boat with you as you navigate this bout with grief. And it might be a professional. It might just be a good friend. It might be a tool that you have. It's exercise or being with nature, doing something creative or doing something for someone else. Because sometimes I feel like to get me unstuck, if I can figure out something I can do for someone else, it makes me feel good about that, and it releases me from dwelling and getting so self-absorbed. And then the third thing I do is just to try to keep moving, try to accomplish one thing that makes life a little better. Sometimes I have a gratitude list, and sometimes that's even too heavy. And so if I can look at the day and say, all right, how is today better in just one way, just one small thing, then that gets me looking around for the things that are still good in life. Because one time a writing professor said to us, if you're going to write, you need to know why you write. And so when I drilled down on that, I thought the reason I write is because of what I believe. Life can be good no matter what. And I have had a lot of what. So I write to remind myself that life can be good, which puts me into looking mode. What is that better thing, that thing that I can be grateful for? And I think that helps. And so if I have to remind myself, I have to look for it. Well, that's what I like to do in my writing.
I love what you're saying, because it's just like when an example, when you're going to go buy a car and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy this car, this model. And all of a sudden that's what you start seeing, right? Because that's what you're focusing on. I didn't even know that model was out there and people were driving the same color that I'm about to buy. And the same with here, when you really do try to focus on the gratitude, focus on what is good and joyful in your life, you do see more and feel more of that. And it doesn't take away from the fact that you still feel sadness, you still feel grief, you still know and validate what your life is now, but you're still able to include these little moments of joy within it. Again, it's like you mentioned the parallel lives of the hope and fear. In that same way, it's the grief, the gratitude, the grief, the joy. They could be parallel. They're not one or. They can be lived at the same time, and you are definitely proof and example of that.
Well, thank you. It's the other part of that statement is it can be good. It isn't is good. It's can, and can implies work. And so that's one of the things that's not particularly fun to hear, but resilience is work. It's not something that comes particularly naturally. You have to, if it's a muscle, you've got to exercise it and be mindful about it. wish it were easier, but
Right.
but you know, after a while it becomes kind of a habit. If you can, you know how to kind of crank yourself up, you know what you have to do, and say, here we go again. I'm on the edge of that pity pit. If I don't do something about it, I'm gonna be in there. So, you know, get outside, you know, have your coffee, play your funky music, whatever it is that you know is your jump starts, to know
It's a
those.
choice. Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice because we can choose to stay in bed and wallow in our grief, and that is a choice, and that is okay. But we can also choose to get up and brush our teeth, and then get up, brush our teeth, and make ourselves breakfast, or get up, brush our teeth, go outside for a walk, go outside and be with nature. We have a choice in certain aspects within our life and in our grief. And those little choices are what can make your your life feel more joyful and full if you take those little choices that right every day make those choices.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Rebecca, tell us more about your two books and the process of writing these books, and what what the readers could expect from them, and who would these books be for?
Yes, so it was really kind of backed into writing. I was in sales and marketing with IBM for years, but after my paralysis in 1997, I you know, it was a very different life. Did not go back to work. I tried it, didn't work out. So I got an email from and this is back when email was just beginning, uh, that from a fellow I hadn't seen since high school, and he'd read it. My dad had written a column about my paralysis, and he wrote an email to me and said, Becky, is the subject was, is that you? And at the time I didn't know, was I going to be Becky in the wheelchair or Becky walking again? And I hadn't seen him in so long. So I updated him on my marriage and my children and their special needs and our divorce and my paralysis. And he was very quick to respond. And I started telling him stories about adjustments to life in the wheelchair. And one of them was playing soccer with my youngest, Peter, who at that time was 4. And so I, you know, was wheeling back and forth in the driveway. At the time I was in a manual wheelchair. So guarding the garage doors, and he would try to shoot and I'd try to block it. And we just had a grand old time. And I had told him about the story, and he shared it with his friends, and I shared it with my friends. And this is before social media or any of that stuff. So he said, well, you know, I think you could write a column about this for the paper. And the Baltimore Sun wound up publishing that op-ed piece and a few more, which led to a From Where I Sit column I did for a locally weekly, and a Looking Homeward column I did with my dad's paper, and a Tuesdays with Madison I did with an autism organization later. So, and that led to the first book, which was Rethinking Possible, which I really think, it wasn't my title, but I think that's a real good definition of resilience, is to rethink what's still possible, right? So, and that's really the story of my crazy life and the lessons I learned, the lens I used to write that book, which is what the editor suggested. You know, what's the one theme that you want to be the thread, is the power of love over loss. And so it can be a very sad story, but there's a lot of love in it, and overcoming some pretty tough things, but still managing to survive it, and actually kind of live fully through it. And then after that book, I talked about that a lot, and people would ask me, you know, what are your practices? What are the things that you do to kind of keep you up? And one of them is a daily reader. I have about 6 different readers that I choose from every morning, and just kind of quick start. I have my lemon water and my coffee and my reading time and my writing time in the morning. And that's my best me is when I
Your
start.
ritual. It's yeah,
Yeah.
you have your ritual and you have yeah, that's so great.
So that was my second book, Morning Fuel. The way I start Fuel Up in the Morning is a collection of 366 little stories and or quotes. And some of them are only a few paragraphs and some of them are a couple pages, and then some reflective questions to kind of jumpstart your day.
I love that. I love that because this is coming from what you've used. This has been your fuel and what's been for 26, 27 years. I mean years
28.
since you 28 years, what you've been able to use as your tool and be this joyful being and share your story with others and keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. So again, those three things I was honesty, resources, and keep moving. Those three things were the things that helped you in your life. And then having one of these resources being your kind of your ritual within your day of how you started your day. It set it up for the rest of the how we were going to feel the rest of the day. Yes?
Yes.
Would you
And my sister and I, we talk almost every morning. She lives 800 miles away from me too. I mean,
Mhm.
connections are important, and writing
Yes.
helps that. And I also still do a Thoughtful Thursday email column where I connect with folks just about what's inspired me to be positive for the week, and that helps with the connection. So it's a a practice that I have. There's some little sound bites that I use sometime. So if I to keep me this, I call it, try to be possibility driven, and that is even though and accept the circumstance that you don't really want, I can still. And so that puts you into possibility mode when you think of, even though I'm paralyzed, I can still write. Even though
And you
my
could still
family,
play soccer with your when your kid was 4 years old. That is
I
pretty that teared me up seeing just imagining you in the driveway being the goalie there. That is just awesome. Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. Yes, go ahead.
no, it was actually, I got one of the best workouts I ever had. And I talked at that time, wheeling the wheels back and forth. I had tire prints on my thumbs. It was really funny. We had a good time with that. But yeah, so I have some like little mind tricks that I use to try to accept the circumstance, because acceptance brings a headspace too. And I think that decision process, I don't realize how much space that uncertainty can take up in your head, but once you have clarity about, okay, I don't like this choice, but I made it. And it's what I'm making at the time, and I can make a different choice later if I need to. But right now, this is how it's like, whew, okay. Then you can keep moving and not be spinning. So I try to make sure that I have enough space ahead of me to make good decisions about what's next. And it's always a big thing. That whole planning thing helps me. I probably do too much of that, but whatever works for you. Some people can really wing it a lot better. I don't wing it really well.
Yeah, planning helps you, and that's good. Having something that you can kind of look forward to. Okay, this is what I'm going to do now. That's fine. I'm more of a wing it. I'm a wing it within certain parameters. Like I still have like certain structure, and then I wing it in between.
Yes, I just have witnessed that this morning. You're amazing.
Oh yeah, and what she's referring to is we weren't able to record where we normally do because it was not working. So we did have to wing it, and it's the first time we're using Google Meet to record this podcast. So we will wing it. We'll see what comes of it. But there's a lot of freedom that comes also from that winging it, and also too, right? That's also acceptance, because you're accepting what is. Okay, now what do we do, right, with what is? And in life, it is that way. You can have a certain idea of what your life is going to look like, and it's okay to have those hopes and dreams, but sometimes it doesn't go that way. And then what do you do with that? And being present, accepting what is, like you said, and then just seeing where you go from that. Now, what's your story going to look like now? And you've definitely shown that with your own story. Every little path has led you to who you are now, and the impact that you're having now on others with your writing and with just your who you are. I'm sure everybody that encounters you ends up leaving with a little hope in their own lives as well when they see you.
Well, that would be an honor, but thank you.
Yes, because you are. Now, Rebecca, I like to ask my guests if there is something I have not asked you that you want to make sure that you share with the audience.
I think there is. I think one of the other learnings that I had is that we all travel through grief differently. And to compare your journey with someone else's is sometimes can be a hard thing. And there's a graphic that I like that shows this Dalmatian and then a little tiny Chihuahua, and they're both in mud. And the question is, how deep is the mud? And it depends on who you ask. Because for the little Chihuahua, it's up to his chest. For the big Dalmatian, it barely covers his feet. And I think that's a really good illustration of how some people seem to get through things very easily and others really struggle. And it's not right or wrong, it's just different. And I think that sometimes what we expect will help us doesn't. For example, when my sister and I were very close, but we realized when we lost mom and dad in each of those grief situations, we really couldn't help each other because we were in our own grief. And we almost kind of made a pact that we had to reach outside ourselves to people that weren't directly affected. So I think to just be mindful of who you are and who is helping you, and to avoid comparison, and to accept your uniqueness as you move through tough times.
As you move through that mud, you do not
Yep.
know if you have Chihuahua legs or if you have Dalmatian legs. So do not compare your own journey with that of another. If like with these stories is not with comparison, when we bring guests like yourself, is just it gives people just that aspect of that possibility and of that hope, in case they're the ones with the little Chihuahua legs in the mud, right? It's like, yeah, that the Dalmatian got out. It's not that I don't have those legs, but I know that there's still a possibility for me to traverse these this grief mud in some shape or form that's gonna help me get out of here. So thank you again for the beautiful analogies and sharing your story. And now let's share how people can reach you and how they can get your books.
Oh, I would love to. So they can reach me. It's very simple, BeckyGalli.com, BeckyGalli.com. And you can sign up for my Thoughtful Thursday there. My books are available wherever you can purchase books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think they even have some at Target and Walmart, but also on your independent bookstores. Please go visit them. They're great places to not only buy books, but to meet people and do a whole lot of other things. They've turned into like gift salons these days. So,
Yes.
but yes, both of them are available there. And my Rethinking Possible, there's an audiobook for that as well. And of course, the others both are in ebook forms. And I would love to hear from you. It's easy to access. Becky at beckygalli.com if you want to email me. But thank you so much for having me and for what you do.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing your story and for going on this journey of this conversation and what we were able to birth from the two of us connecting. So thank you.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.